So thanks for taking the time to learn a little bit more about the Iowa State application process. We'll go through some introductions here in just a second, but I did want to kind of do a couple of housekeeping things. One is if you have questions, please put those in the chat box. You can message one of us, the co-presenters today, or you can send your question kind of to everyone, depending on what your comfort level is. You all are muted and have your video off, and you are also welcome to message one of us, say, I have a question, and you can ask your question out loud as well. So either type it in the chat box or ask it out loud. We're hoping today is informative and really gets to the questions that you all have. So thank you for joining. It may be a good idea also for you to have a separate window with your VMCAS and even your supplemental application open today. So with that, we will go ahead and get started with introductions. My name is Deanna Gerber. I'm the coordinator of recruitment here at Iowa State, which essentially means that I work with pre-vet students wherever they're at kind of in their journey. So I'm happy to be here, and I get to kind of carry us through these this info with the help of the experts, which are Dr. Monica Howard and Kathy Keel. So I'm going to let them introduce themselves. Kathy, do you want to go next since your name is in the middle there?
I'm Kathy Keel. I'm the coordinator of admissions. Basically, I help people go through the admissions process and tell them when we are missing something. Basically handle the actual admissions process itself.
Great, thanks, Kathy. And Dr. Howard, take it away.
Hi, I'm Dr. Howard. I'm the Assistant Dean of Veterinary Student Success and Director of Multicultural Student Success. And I work with Ms. Keel and Ms. Gerber, Ms. Keel more intimately because we work on the admissions process together. Doing the same types of things that she does. What she did omit was that we both answer questions prior to the start of the admissions cycle with respect to courses that are appropriate, clarification on deadlines or prerequisites, those types of things. And then, of course, into the admissions process itself and contacting you on the message board and those types of things. So glad you're here.
Great, thank you both. Okay, so a little bit about how the app or how this this morning is going to run. We'll talk a lot about the admissions process. In that, we're going to bundle in information for new applicants, things to keep in mind, but also for students reapplying. These are really great tips on how to improve your application from what you may have submitted in the past. So kind of general information that's going to cover both groups of folks in the first kind of section of our webinar today. And then what we'll do for the application details, we're going to break out into two separate groups. I'll walk through the VMCAS application and the supplemental application, kind of giving some good kind of a roadmap for both of those. For students who haven't applied yet, Dr. Howard and Kathy are going to go into a breakout room with students who have applied before and talk more about improving their specific application, answer questions that you all have about that. And then with any time left over, we're going to be able to, kind of come back together and tackle some general questions as well. So that's kind of how the day is going to go. We'll kind of take a break and send you out into those research or into those breakout rooms as well. So let's go ahead and get started. I have a couple of disclaimers here. So obviously the three of us are, intimately involved with Iowa State and students applying to Iowa State. We may talk in general about VMCAS, about supplemental applications and things like that, but everything covered here is about Iowa State's admission process. So if you are applying to multiple schools, you'll want to reach out to them as well for kind of some of this information too. So by all means, look at this as this is really how to improve or how to make your application one that will meet all of our requirements and is what our admissions committee is looking for, not a blanket, kind of all vet school sort of session. If you are a Nebraska resident applying to the 2+2 program, the UNL program follows our admissions process closely, but it's not exactly the same. So if you are a Nebraska resident, please reach out to them, and and you've got their email address there, and they'll be able to kind of help you with any other questions that you have. Anything that we want to add to that? Good. Okay. So just a little bit about how your application kind of goes through the process on VMCAS. So you'll see there, most of you all are going to be, I don't think we have any received applications yet for this cycle. Okay, good. I didn't know if anybody was like, really ahead of the game this year. So right now your application is in progress, right? You're working on it. You haven't submitted your application, but we have your contact information to, reach out to you if you have any questions or anything like that. Once you've hit submit, you'll see your application go into kind of a received status. You can hit submit before all of your letters of recommendation are in and before all of your transcripts are in. So you don't have to wait for those in order to hit submit, pay your application fee, and all of that. Once all of your information is in, once VMCAS has gone through and, once all of your transcripts have been received, your application is complete. And then VMCAS will work on verifying those transcripts. Once they are verified, kind of in that completed and verified stage, that's where Kathy and Dr. Howard begin their work processing through those applications. Correct, Kathy?
Correct.
Good. Okay, perfect. So that's kind of a high level overview. The other thing I will say is that we can send out this slide deck too if you want to kind of look at it more in depth. So you can see here kind of how our admission process begins. You're going to hit submit on the VMCAS application. You're going to, submit and pay your fee for that. We also require a supplemental application. I think that's very important. We'll talk about it a lot more later on, but we do every year have students who essentially pay VMCAS for us to be able to look at their application, but they don't fill out a supplemental application. So we cannot look at your application unless we have both. So you'll want to hit submit on that supplemental application, turn in your signature page, and pay the supplemental application fee. So once you hit submit on VMCAS, then they're going to start, once they've got your transcripts, they're going to start your kind of looking through those transcripts. That's also, if you do the professional transcript entry, that's when those will start after you've hit submit and your all of your transcripts are in. That's something that you can pay to have VMCAS enter all of your classes in for you, or you can do it manually without the fee associated. Our office has no preference on which way you do that. You just want to make sure that those classes are in, and if you're doing it yourself, you're matching that transcript, which I think we talk about a little bit later too. So you'll see there, VMCAS will start that verification process. Then the applications are reviewed by us or by Dr. Howard and Kathy and their team. once they're kind of verified in that system.
Deanna?
Yes.
The one thing about professional transcript entry that people need to remember, and this would be for new applicants, is that once they enter it, they send it back to you. You must approve it. A lot of people forget to approve it, then it is not, your application is not listed as verified. So just remember, if you're doing professional transcript entry, you need to make sure that when VMCAS sends it to you, it's done. They send it to you, you have to approve it before it actually becomes verified.
Perfect. Thank you. Yeah, I think that's a good thing to know. Definitely. I've got a question here. Last year, I think they waived the fee for Iowa State students. Is that still true? Yes. So on the supplemental application, if you are a degree seeking Iowa State student or an alumni, you do not have to pay that supplemental application fee. You also do not have to pay the supplemental application fee if you applied last year, right? Last application cycle.
Right, unless that was your third, or this will be your third application to Iowa State.
Okay.
It's good. The application fee is good for 2 consecutive years. So you know, if you applied last year and you're reapplying, you do not need to pay the supplemental application fee.
Yep. VMCAS also offers application waivers that you do need to apply for. So if you are looking for waivers for both the supplemental and the the VMCAS application, definitely check into the VMCAS application waiver, and then we will waive that fee as well. Correct, Kathy? So if
Correct.
you're if you are given that waiver from VMCAS, you can get that supplemental application fee waived as well. So trying to help out. We know that it's expensive to apply to vet school, definitely. So great. I do see a couple other questions coming in the chat box. So thank you for those. I think we will address them kind of throughout the presentation too. So stay tuned, but thank you for putting in those questions. Yes.
So you know, I cannot see any of the questions.
So there's questions that came directly to me, but if if there are
Okay,
questions
that's fine.
that
I wanted you to know that.
come directly to you, please let me know, interrupt me. So,
Oh, no, that's fine, as long as you're going to address them.
Yep. Okay, so the next bit of our webinar is really going to cover these 2 questions. I think by far and wide, whenever we are, emailed, whenever we're talking to students in person, whenever we do one of these and ask for questions, these 2 are really the biggest questions and the most frequent questions that we get. So how do I make my application stand out, and how do I improve my chances of getting into Iowa State? So if those were your questions, please feel free to, or please definitely tune in, take notes, all of that kind of stuff. However, backtracking really quickly, it says we still need to fill out and send in the supplemental application, right? We just do not need to pay the fee. Yes, if you are a re-applicant, or if you're, an Iowa State student who doesn't have to pay that fee, you still need to fill out the supplemental application. We need a new supplemental application each year from each applicant. So yes, thank you for clarifying that.
And don't forget to submit the signature page. We need that submitted as well. A lot of people will fill out the supplemental and then never complete the signature page. So we need you to complete the signature page as well.
Yep. And that will be marked on your supplemental application. We'll kind of chat about that in a little bit too. So it will say if your signature page has been turned in or not. So, okay. So just a little bit, and Kathy, I might have you break these down too. So just a little bit about our, the class of 2024. So our now rising second year students. You can kind of see here their profile. You can see, especially the things that I like to point out are the kind of what background they're coming in with. So you can see 23 students didn't have a degree. 129 did. So by far the majority of our students are coming in with that bachelor's degree. And then 5 students had a master's as well. So just a little bit about our class. We'll talk about GPAs in a little while as well. But anything else you want to point out about the class profile?
Nothing except that if you look at the range of years, we have a very diverse group of people as to their age. Some have families, some don't, things like that. So you're not coming into a group of people that is homogenous in the sense of age. They will have all different types of backgrounds. And also, I just like to tell people that not all people are going to be 20, 21 years old.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's no one correct path to get to vet school, definitely, or one timeline to get to vet school. Great. Okay, so let's talk about our application process briefly. We're going to take each one of these, kind of sections and talk more in depth about each one. But just kind of as a overview, you can see there 45% of your score comes from your academic review. 45 comes from a committee review, which is essentially everything else on your application that's not academics. New this year is the Casper test. So we'll talk more about what that is and how we'll use that in a little bit. But we are one of the schools that's requiring that Casper test now. I think the last time I looked, there were 8 or 10 schools that were requiring that. So it's becoming more popular, definitely. Good to know as well that the GRE, the graduate record exam, is not required for Iowa State. If you do put your scores on VMCAS or send them into us, we are not going to evaluate them at all. So no need to take the GRE if you're just applying to Iowa State. If you are still kind of trying to figure out which vet schools you're going to submit your application to, if you go to applytovetschool.org, which I'll stick in the chat here, that has a good list of all of the vet schools, what their requirements are, and all of that. I believe I haven't counted in a while. I don't know if either of you have. I think we're well over half of the schools, and probably up to 2/3 of the schools are not requiring the GRE anymore. But
yeah, I don't have an exact number either, but a lot of them are not.
Okay, and then I just put applytovetschool.org in the chat. So if you want to take a look at that, you can. Okay. Great. Let's talk about the academic review, and then I see a couple of questions here, kind of along those lines. So we will definitely address those too. So let's talk a little bit about the academic process or the academic review. So we do look at the cumulative undergraduate GPA only to make sure that you meet that 2.5 minimum. That's something that's written into Iowa code. So we abide by that. So we'll look at the cumulative GPA, make sure you're above a 2.5, and then we don't look at that cumulative anymore. It doesn't factor into your score. What we are looking at is the required science GPA, which is our science prerequisite courses. So it's not a general science GPA. It's based on our science-based prerequisites. Each year, the committee does set a GPA cutoff for that required science GPA. It fluctuates each year based on the quality and quantity of our applicants. So, it's been, I think, as low as a 2.5, correct? And this year, or last year and this year, we're both a 3.0 for non-resident students, which is the highest it's been in a while, or maybe ever been. I can't remember what you said.
It's the highest it's been, and also we experienced the most applications we've ever had. So did a lot of schools this past year. So I don't know whether COVID is causing that or not, but definitely all schools are getting a lot more applications, which is what's making it a little bit harder to get in.
Mhm. Yeah. The non-residents and our contract students are at about a 2.8 then for that GPA cutoff. Again, it's set though after we get in all of our applications, so there's not a way to say right now what our GPA cutoff would be. But
My guess is it will be 3 point again, so I think people should aim for that. I can't guarantee that, but I can't see them going much higher than a 3 point.
mhm, yeah. Yes, Catherine. So is the science GPA cutoff based on the applicant pool? Yes, it's based on the number of applicants we get in a given year or in that year, and it's based on what their GPAs are. Absolutely. So, yep, we use that to kind of set that GPA. Oh, so the prediction of the 3.0, I believe, is for non-resident students, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Last year, we also had the largest amount of residents that we've had since I've been here, which is a long time. I don't know whether that one I'm a little more fuzzy on. I don't know whether it will be a 2.8 or if it will be higher this year. I really can't guess on that.
Mhm. Great. Thank you. Thank you for those clarifying questions too. That's great. Okay, so that's required science GPA. The last 45 credits then is kind of the second part of the GPA that we look at. We will take the whole semester where you hit 45 credits. We don't split that term. So you may see more than 45 credits factored into that that GPA if we're taking a whole semester. I'm just making sure.
Deanna,
Yes.
also, we need to let everybody know, we do not use the VMCAS calculations. So, somebody says, well, VMCAS is way off on whatever calculation. We do not use those calculations that you will see in VMCAS. We do put on your status page, which is in the supplemental application portal. We do put the GPAs we have calculated for both the science GPA and the last 45. If you have a question about that GPA that we've calculated, that's where you'll find it. You need to email us. Last year, we had almost 2,000 applications. In doing this, we can make an error. We don't do it often, but we have made errors. So if you question your GPA, we're more than happy to show you how we calculated it. And if there is an error, that way it can be corrected. If you don't contact us, those are the GPAs that will be used in the evaluation.
And don't email us, put it in the message board.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Howard.
Yep. Okay, so Michaela asks, is that something we can see as we apply, or do we not know the science GPA until after the application deadline? So when you hit submit on your application and Kathy and Dr. Howard start doing those academic reviews, you'll see that as soon as they review your academics. You can, so if you look on our prerequisites, and I don't have them listed on one of our slides here, but if you look at our science-based prerequisites, they're chemistry, biology, OChem, biochem, genetics, physics, anatomy, and physiology. And you take your GPA, and you take your grades from that, or from those specific classes, you can calculate that GPA roughly on your own as well. So
Deanna, there's you will see them when we put them up. This is one advantage to applying early. As you can imagine, once we start getting verified applications, we start calculating GPAs. Once it's calculated, it will be up there. So, however, the majority of our applications will actually come the week before the deadline, the verified ones, the week or two before the deadline and several weeks after the deadline. So if you're later in the process, you will not see those until after the deadline, because right at the deadline, we are inundated and we just cannot get all of them calculated that quickly. So that's what makes the difference between, between whether you see it or not. Is the earlier you get it in, the earlier it's verified, the earlier we get to it. There's also a question here talking about, is there a cutoff for the last 45 credits? No, there is not. So that one you do not need to worry about.
I just want to go, there was a previous question about Casper. If they did Casper for a school last year, can they use that? I don't think anybody's addressed that, so.
No, I was going to address it when we came to Casper. We
Okay.
applied on Casper.
Okay, so we do have a question about what courses are satisfactory to fulfill the 8 credit general biology prerequisites. That's typically general biology 1 and general biology 2, plus the labs. If you go onto our website, and I don't know if Kathy or Dr. Howard, you've got your web browser up and could post the link to the prerequisites. Those are, it's kind of outlined there. It's got a little bit more of a description in there as well. So
right, we look for general biology 1 and 2. If your school does not have biology 1 and 2, we will look for an organismal biology and a cellular biology. So that's how it usually works. Also, if you have a degree in general biology, that's not microbiology or there's a variety of others. It's just general biology that will also fulfill the general biology requirement.
Great. And then pass-fail classes from 2020 because of COVID won't be calculated into your GPA. So they'll as long as you pass that class, they'll essentially say, yes, you've completed that, prerequisite. It will not factor into your GPA. Great. Okay. So these are for the incoming first year students and the rising VM2s. You can see the GPAs, the average GPAs, or the mean GPAs there. So again, this is, kind of that middle average. It's not, it doesn't mean that only people above a 3.6 are going to get in. Obviously you've got an entire application, but for kind of your information and if you want to calculate your GPAs, you can kind of see where you would fall within those 2 classes. So usually it's been hovering around there, like a 3, 3.5, 3.6, 3.7. So that's I think pretty average for us, at least the last few years. So let's move on and talk about the committee review. So there's a lot that goes into this committee review. So you'll see here kind of the things that we'll touch on in the next few slides too. So we're going to kind of break these down as well. But the committee will not see your GPA. They will see where you went to school and what your major was, and those sorts of things, but they will not see your GPA. They are looking at you outside of grades, essentially. So let's kind of tackle work experience first. I get this question a lot, and I know Dr. Howard and Kathy do as well. Do I put in that I worked, in a fast food place? Or I talked to a student yesterday, actually, who was going to leave bartending off of her application. Essentially, when you give us that general work experience, one of the things I said to her was, I'm like, I bet you deal with difficult customers a lot. Or customers that are happy or sad or, angry or whatever. And she said, yeah. And I said, well, that's something that you've learned a lot from that you may want to tell us about. So essentially that work experience is really general work experience is great to let our admissions committee know. You're going to learn communication skills, you're going to learn organization skills, you're going to learn I'm sure some stuff about customer service as well. So let us know about that. Essentially on your application you are telling your story, so tell us your story, even if it's not related to veterinary medicine or animals. So
The way I was just going to say, the way the committee sees that is we had an applicant last year who put in no work experience because he felt, basically he's a mechanic, and he felt that that was, not relatable. Well, when they looked at his application, he'd worked there 4 years, 2 years full time, and they thought he didn't have any work experience. So that put a very, that kind of tainted his application, because it looked like he was sitting around waiting to get into vet school. So that's why you need to put everything in. They're not going to know it if you don't put it in your application.
Mhm. Okay, so aside from work experience, then we obviously do look for animal, veterinary, and research experience. We're looking for at least 200 hours, kind of either in veterinary experience or kind of split between the three of these. So here's some really great tips for putting in that veterinary or animal, veterinary, and research experience. Like Kathy says here, more is not always better. If you have like a couple of like 2 hour, stints somewhere, you may wonder, or you may kind of consider whether those are really bolstering your application or not. Question, do you have a calculated mean of veterinary experience hours for accepted applicants, Kathy?
No, we do not. We don't have that because of the variety of ways that people put in their experience, and you'll see some more about this later, but sometimes they are not exactly correct. Sometimes it's more, we look more at the quality than the quantity. You could have 1,000 hours at, say, a clinic, but if most of your experience was cleaning kennels or something like that, that's not a great level of experience. We look for experiences where responsibilities are increased, things like that. So we do not calculate it because it really wouldn't give you a good idea of how many hours people actually had of good quality experience.
Mhm. One thing to point out here is that our committee does value experiences where you can increase your responsibility too. So like Kathy said, maybe you started out, cleaning kennels, but then you were more involved in the clinic, in the exam room, in the surgery suite, out on farm calls, those sorts of things that gave you that increased level of responsibility. Good to point out anytime that you have that.
I guess I would also add that even if you have if you're cleaning kennels, like Ms. Keel said, 1,000 hours of that is not really meaningful. So it's not to say that cleaning kennels is not meaningful, it is, but 1,000 hours is probably not. Also, don't underestimate how you can show initiative and growth even in cleaning kennels. Okay, so if you're cleaning outdoor runs and there's an animal that has diarrhea and the staff doesn't know about that, or you see something wrong with the chain link of those kennels, and you bring that to the attention of someone, if part of your part of that job, you do some makeshift sort of repair. So anything to show that you're just not hosing feces and urine down a drain. there's value even in those types of what people would consider menial tasks. So don't just consider that when you're doing those types of things, and how you can highlight what you've learned or how you've grown just by doing a menial task.
Yeah, I think that that's perfect. Yeah, there's a lot that I think students take for granted that they, they'll put on that they cleaned kennels, but those details are really what's going to help you communicate to the admissions committee what you were actually doing, the attention that you gave your job and everything. Yeah, perfect. Thank you. Okay, so definitely watch your hours and dates of employment. I think this is especially important for those of you who maybe, have always grown up around animals, have, family members who are veterinarians. And so you feel like you've, lived in the clinic since you were 6 or something like that. But you really want to be realistic in your hours. These are some of the comments that came from previous applications, some of the comments made by our admissions committee from previous application cycles. So you can see there, the one at the bottom, it's 20,000 more hours than they've been alive. The admissions committee will calculate that if they kind of see something that's fishy. They will do the math and kind of highlight those. So be realistic in those hours and dates of employment. I talked to a student who said, they've been shadowing or they've been showing animals, forever. And so we talked through, okay, realistically, when you were doing that, what did that look like? And if you can be, kind of a little bit more on the conservative side with your hours, especially for things like that, and then use your description to kind of talk about what that looked like, what you did, and all of that. But definitely you want to make sure that you're being realistic in those hours, essentially. So
the one thing I want to say when you're talking about hours, this is one of the reasons that we don't calculate hours. Make sure as you look at things that you are giving, because people will put in whatever 8 hours a day doing 3 different things. So that means you're using your 24 hours in the day up. You're not sleeping, you're not going to school, you're not eating. So take a close look. I don't think they're actually done on purpose, but I think people just don't think about what it really looks like when you put things down. So just be really careful when you do it, that you are allowing yourself time to be in school, to do those, do sleep, eat, all those other things that you may do. That is quite important. The other thing that probably should be mentioned for anyone who has a parent that is a veterinarian, that's great. That gives you a lot of credibility, except the committee still likes to see you have some initiative to get experience elsewhere. Because you're basically, if you're set in a clinic and your folks are there, you may never have had to actually try and go get experience. They like to see you kind of get out of your comfort zone from that angle and get some other experience other than in your parents' clinic.
Mm-hmm. So we've got a question here about shadowing versus kind of paid work at an experience. It says, would you rather see paid work at a veterinary clinic, or does shadowing, is shadowing good enough?
Dr. Howard, do you want to address that, or I can? Dr. Howard.
She said you, Kathy.
Oh, okay. Basically with that, is shadowing is becoming more and more important, because we're realizing that a lot of people either can't find a job at a clinic or things like that. However, I know the committee does still value some types of hands-on experience. The one thing that people that are shadowing, they need to look at things not again, experience is not to teach you the technical skills. They'll do that in vet school. What you need to do is, what did you learn about the profession? What did you take away from watching the veterinarian do surgery or handle an emergency case? Even just, what have you learned from just being in the clinic environment about how the veterinarian works with his colleagues and staff and things like that? So a lot of what you put in your essay and show what you have learned about the profession and learned what you like and what you don't like, that is probably the best thing that you can do. It's not so much as learning technical skills. So don't worry about not having technical skills, but do look at the entire way a clinic is operated. If you're doing research, the same thing. How is research in general handled, and how does the major professor or the professor handle his research, and what type of impacts does it have? So you have to look at it from a kind of a holistic manner, and that will make a big difference, because that can really help your essays, particularly in showing them that you do understand what you're getting into and you have a good understanding of the profession.
And just to add on to that, shadowing, while it is typically a passive type of experience, it's passive if you make it passive, if you limit it to being passive. So you can imagine that there are hundreds of you out there trying to get some type of experience. And if shadowing is the only thing that you're able to do, you need to make the most out of that experience and to hopefully open the door to more responsibility. So if you are shadowing a case and or a veterinarian, and they're working on a case or working with a client and a patient, and they're talking about what's going on with this animal with the client, pick up keywords. Always have a notepad with you or some type of little small spiral notebook where you can write down words or diagnoses. Then go read up on that. You know, you can do the Dr. Google if you want, or if that clinic you're working at happens to have a library of books in that's available for the techs and the veterinarian, go look that up. Okay, so let's just say an animal has Cushing's disease and you want to read about it. Go read about it. You may not understand all the medical jargon, but show some initiative. And then what you do, you follow up with that veterinarian to say, you know, when you guys have a break, or you're just sitting around after hours, or maybe you guys do a lunch, a potluck lunch or whatever, and talk to that veterinarian about, hey, so I did some reading on Cushing's disease. And so how many animals a year do you see with Cushing's? And so talk to them about what you have seen as a shadow, because that speaks to that veterinarian that you are going above and beyond just sitting there being a passive observer, and you are taking some initiative in trying to learn. And what that could do for you, two things that can do for you. One is, if that veterinarian sees that you're just not one of the hundreds of kids coming through there to get experience, they might say, well, you know what? I think I might want to employ this person. Or I want to give them more experience, more duties, because I see that they are having a vested interest in this. The other thing is that when you get ready to have a letter of reference written by that veterinarian, they can say, this person started just shadowing, and because of their talks with me afterwards and how they really did their best to understand the things that we were seeing, I feel confident that this person is really growing in understanding what the profession is like, and you know, that they're a self-starter, they're on the track to being a lifelong learner. You got to set yourself up so you make the experience as passive as you want it to be.
I think that's wonderful. Thank you. So we have couple of questions here about listing out or calculating total number of hours. So in VMCAS, they do, essentially average number of hours per week worked. And then you say how many weeks you did that, and then that'll give you a total. So a question I have here is it more important that the average number of hours worked per week is correct, or the total number of hours, especially for those folks who maybe, work a few hours during the school year each week, but then work 8 hours, during the summer at one, vet clinic. So should their goal be the total hours worked be accurate, or
The total hours worked should be accurate. But you're gonna, like, if you can keep track of your hours, that's the best thing. But say you work maybe 10 hours a week during the academic year, but then went 40 over the summer. Just calculate that out and divide it by 52 weeks or however many weeks you've worked for that place, and figure out an average. The best is trying to keep track of it yourself, and then putting everything together, coming out with an average for the weeks that you've worked.
great, thank you. I'm just quickly reading through the questions, making sure I didn't miss anybody. I think I'm caught up there. Okay, so we're going to transition from experiences to letters of recommendation, knowing that if you will have time at the end if you do think of a question on anything that we've covered so far. So I know, Kathy, you wanted to take this one away, so I'll let you.
Right. Okay, letters of recommendation. The first thing is what we always say is we require 3, and so do a lot of other vet schools. We always recommend 4 because every year we are basically denying people because only 2 of the recommendations come in. We will not take any direct or letters of recommendation here. They have to go through the VMCAS system. That is cut off on September 15th at 11:59 p.m. So we always recommend 4 so that if somebody drops the ball or whatever, doesn't get their letter in, then you will still have your 3 recommended or 3 required letters of recommendation. And unfortunately, even though it may be the evaluator's fault that the recommendation didn't get in, that is, we will not accept a late recommendation. However, you can always see whose recommendations are in and whose recommendations are not. So you need to, gently remind people that they have to do this before that deadline in order to help you. The last thing is we accept all 6. VMCAS will take 6. We will accept all 6. The evaluators will read all 6. However, again, we say this frequently, if all of your letters are, or like say 3 out of the 6 are all from veterinarians at a clinic that all at where you worked, that all said the same thing, addressed the same things, that really isn't what we want. If you work at a clinic and you've worked with a large animal vet and a small animal vet, yes, those 2 letters would be good. They can address different things. But like if it's a small animal veterinary clinic, you get letters from 3 vets, that probably will not help you because these people, the reviewers, are looking at hundreds of applications, and they, they'll kind of just look at them and glance at them. So you want each of your recommendations to speak to something. It should, the letters of recommendation should show that you're a well-rounded person. Again, you don't want 3 academic people or 3 veterinarians. You can have a variety of references. If, say, you've been in 4-H your entire life, and I know you wouldn't be in college, but a 4-H leader that you've worked with for years can also give a really good reference for you. So don't look only at academics and veterinary experience. Look at employers as well. So there's a variety of recommendations you can get. Just make each recommendation speak to something different versus having a homogeneous group of recommenders that all basically say the same thing. We do not require a recommendation from a veterinarian, but it is strongly encouraged. Our committee decided they wanted to make the decision because they think of things like, well, what if they worked for an older veterinarian who is either retired, not around, has passed away, things like that. So they want to make the decision as to whether a veterinary reference was required from that person. However, we strongly encourage that you have one, particularly if you've worked or shadowed a veterinarian for any type of time. That's a red flag. If you were with this veterinarian for say 3 years, but you didn't get a reference from them, that's going to be a red flag. So you need to look at that as well. One thing that Deanna always stresses is it's better that they know you well than to be well known. We've had the university president, we've had bank presidents, we've had senators and things like people like that have written letters. If they don't know you well, it will be a form letter that will mean pretty much nothing. If they know you well and can kind of put in the letter how they know you with respect as to how you would do in vet school, that's great. But if it's just because your parents know this person and this person's willing to write you a recommendation, that's great, but the recommendation won't see anything. The committee reviewers, again, we don't interview. The committee reviewers will see you through the eyes of your recommenders, and so they should know you well. The process is once you sign them up in VMCAS, they will immediately receive an email link, or you will, Deanna, you're going to have to go through that one about the actual process, but they will get an email stating that you are asking them to write you an email and give them the instructions. I'm thinking since not everybody will give a good recommendation, it is okay to say, hey, can you write me a good letter of recommendation? Can you write me a great letter of recommendation? It shouldn't be, because at least that puts them in the spot where they can say, no, I don't know you well enough, or something like that. Again, they cannot be related by blood or marriage. So don't say, my parents are veterinarians and they know me the best, so I'm having a recommendation from them. It will not be reviewed, and it will probably, again, put a little bit of a different kind of light on your application. Deanna, would you change to the next slide?
We've got a couple of questions here
Okay,
that I wonder if we want to tackle first, since we're kind of on the general information. So they're both in the chat. Can we still get letters of recommendation from professors / previous employees if we haven't worked with them for about a year? Just graduated and would like to use one of those professors.
Nothing, absolutely nothing wrong with that. As long as they know you well and you feel that they can give the reviewers a good idea of who you are, definitely. You know, maybe if you worked with them in grade school, that might be something different, but a year out from high school or 2 years, whatever, that is not a problem at all.
Mm-hmm. And then going back to the multiple vets question, so should they limit it to more than one, or just one veterinarian from the same place, or if they have 2 or 3 vets from the same place plus other letters, how do we feel about that?
Okay, it depends upon what the vets kind of how they know you. If like I say, if they're all small animal practitioners from the same small animal place, and they all do basically the same thing and have known you in the same capacity, you probably don't have to do overkill with two or three letters. That would be kind of overkill. If one's a large animal vet and you've done farm calls and things like that with that vet, and you've also worked with another vet who's small animal vet, then yes, they would see you in a different, excuse me, a different light. So that would be okay, but you just don't want the letters to all address the same thing and say the same thing, because that's just redundant for the committee to review. And again, it doesn't necessarily, it doesn't hurt you, but it's just like, okay, here's another letter, it says the same thing. So that would be what I'd say. Again, if they're going to say the same thing, they all see you in the same type of environment, then I'd still stick with the one you feel knows you the best and can give you the best recommendation.
And they need to have new letters submitted if they are reapplying, correct?
They need to have a new letter each year. However, they can be a vet that sent a recommendation for you the previous year. So it doesn't matter if you have the same people as your references, but a new letter is necessary, I believe, in VMCAS.
Perfect. Okay, so now we can talk a little bit more about what those good quality letters of recommendation look like. And I'll let you take it away again.
Yes, I'm using quotes from actual applications that we have received. This is basically what you would love to have from an evaluator. The letter, hopefully prior to this last ending statement, would say a little bit of how they've seen you, given a couple of examples and things. But this is what you kind of want the people to say. In summary, this is what you want. So this would be a very good letter. The end of the next one. These, however, are not what you want to see. This is why you need to know your references, and you need to ask, can you write me a good or great letter of reference? These are all letters that we've received, and there are others too, but these are ones that I just picked out to kind of show you what people will write if you don't know what your relationship with them is. And these definitely bring up a red flag to the committee. So again, choose your recommenders wisely. Just make sure that you know them and that you know what they feel about you, because you definitely don't want letters like this. I think that takes us to the end of recommendations. Do we have any questions?
Yes, so we do have a question about, if they're involved in collegiate sports, could they have a coach, like a head coach or an assistant coach write one?
Oh, definitely. That definitely speaks to you in a different light, how you manage your time, how you work as a team member. All that can be leadership in there, depending upon what you're doing within that sport. So definitely that is not something, again, as long as they know you well, that would give you an excellent reference.
Mm-hmm. I would add a couple of things to when I have a student ask me to write a letter of reference for them, a veterinary student, I will always ask them, you sit and reflect on what your attributes are. What are qualities in you that you think are positive, and what are areas that you feel could use some work? You should do that for yourself. And when you go to your recommender, you say, these are the things I think are great attributes about me. And if you can speak to them, that would be great. These are things that I know I need to work on. And I want you to know I'm trying to do that. And so, you know, if you want to speak to that, you can as well. So, you know, you need to do some work on your part and reflect. Another thing is that earlier, Ms. Gerber talked about, you know, how expensive it is to apply. You have to look at this whole process as an investment. And so when we have students who don't get their letters in, whether it's something happens to their professor or their professor just forgets, Ms. Keel said, gently remind them. We have more students that are so afraid to remind a reviewer to submit their letter of reference. You have made a serious investment. And it's just like buying a car and not remembering to change the oil, okay? If you're not gonna pay the attention to this application that you need to do, then you've just wasted an investment, okay? So think about that. This takes a lot of your time and money to do this. With respect to letters of reference as well, I like the idea or the question that someone said about a coach. I had 2 kids that did collegiate athletics, and those folks spend an inordinate amount of time with you. So definitely have them write a letter if you think they can write you a great letter of reference. To limit your letters of reference to I would suggest getting diverse letters of reference. If you get all of your letters of reference from veterinarians, you have limited the scope of what people can see about you. So if you do stuff with your church, if you worked at a homeless shelter or a food bank, or done any type of volunteer work, it would be great to get letters from those folks. And even if they have, what they say is, I've only known this person for 3 months. If they have gotten to know you well in 3 months, they can you know, introduce that letter with, I've only known X person for 3 months. However, in the short span of time, this is what I observed about this person. So they can put it in context, the brevity of their work with you, but they can also come back with, hey, this person was lights out, extremely competent, you know, reliable, whatever the case might be. But think about the diversity of people you interact with. If all you have is letters from vets, that says, you don't get out of that circle too much, do you? So think about that.
Thank you, Dr. Howard. So I wonder if you'll talk about that in context of, like, Vanessa's question here says that if the evaluator isn't involved in veterinary medicine, are they supposed to be writing about attributes as a person of them as a person, or why they think they would be a good veterinarian?
Great question, Vanessa. So here's what I would say. Let's say you worked at some type of service industry. Maybe you worked at McDonald's. Okay? I'm just going to throw McDonald's out there. And you're getting a letter from that person. Think about the attributes you needed to work at McDonald's. So you needed to be customer friendly. You needed to be prompt. You're working also in a food industry. Public health is a big thing in food industry, right? So you need to think about, okay, here's some spin on veterinary medicine here. But when that evaluator is writing about you, no, they can't necessarily write about how you would be a good veterinarian. But they can talk about, these are the attributes that are what's desired in anybody who is employed. And they can say, if they have a veterinarian, they could say, these are attributes I see in my veterinarian, or if I had a veterinarian, I would want that person to be prompted when my appointment comes. I would want them to take the time to talk to me. If I'm displeased, I want them to be able to listen to me, because, you know, working in the food industry, there are going to be complaints. So it's not a tough leap, but people don't think about it in that respect. So I hope that helps, Vanessa. So, you can tell them you're applying to veterinary school, but, the job is on you to identify those attributes and then, roll with it.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. So on what the evaluators fill out, there are 3 questions that are related to veterinary medicine. Everything else are those qualities that Dr. Howard was talking about. So they will let on their, kind of form that they'll fill out, they will say whether they're a veterinarian or not. They'll speak to your abilities to work with large animals and your abilities to work with small animals. There's also a not observed option for that too. So if they're not a veterinarian or haven't seen you in that context, they can say not observed. Everything else is about your personal qualities, not about specific to veterinary, anything specific to veterinary medicine. So yeah, I think that's a great point. It's really they're really your character references, right? Not that, yes, this person should be in vet school. It's like, hey, this person is wonderful and I support them. Those are kind of the letters that you're looking for. So there was a question, if I'm applying to a school that's not Iowa this year and then decide to apply to Iowa next year, can I use the same letters since you would be only applying to Iowa State once? So essentially, the VMCAS system is going to ask you to submit new request new letters of recommendation each year. So who you apply to from year to year doesn't matter. If you are reapplying, you'll need to request letters of recommendation again. Can be from the same people though. So it can be the same panel each year. They just need to refill out that form and upload a new letter every year. So before we move on from letters of recommendation, any last minute things that we want to chat about? Good. Okay, perfect. So let's talk a little bit about other things that you might add to your application. You can see there, community service and leadership, or leadership and honors. Our admissions committee highly values volunteerism, so how you give back to your community and how you have developed yourself as a leader. So I would, if I've been doing either one of those things, I would make sure to highlight that in there. We'll also look at personal development. You can see some examples there for that. This is also kind of a time, I got a question a while ago that was about pursuing a master's degree before veterinary school. And if that would be impactful or not. And I think it was an MBA. So they were really wondering about like that non-science master's. Would that go in here, Dr. Howard and Kathy?
Whether they were anticipating it or.
So whether they were in, like, say that they signed up for an MBA, they applied to vet school kind of in the middle.
That will be in their education part. That's where they would put that. However, to me, that would be something now that they've gone back to the personal statement that would be kind of addressed why they are doing that in that personal statement.
Great. Okay, perfect. You can also, in your explanation statement, talk about any special circumstances. So, that's where if you have something, maybe it's a life situation, maybe, something personal that you would like to tell us about that doesn't fit in any other part of the application, special circumstances is where you want to put that. Keep in mind, especially for our admissions committee who does not see a GPA, it is not a place to apologize for the B that you got instead of an A. Not the place to do it. So if you had a rocky semester and you want to explain that and how you've recovered from that, that makes sense. Rocky semester, again, not being all A's and 1B's, but like, maybe you had to withdraw from some classes or something like that. So So that explanation statement really is a place for you to, explain, um, or give context to something that you really want the admissions committee to know about. You can also put in there any impacts on that COVID has had. So maybe I know a lot of students who lost study abroad opportunities, internships, veterinary experience because of COVID. It might be a place to address that. Again, though, it's you'll want to talk about how you overcame that or how you kind of pivoted and did something else with that. It's not necessarily a place to just kind of complain, if that makes sense. So, and then also to kind of give you some other info on COVID impact. So we will accept pass-fail courses for winter of 2020 through spring of 2021. So we'll accept pass-fail for our prerequisites for that. Anything else on this kind of hodgepodge before we head into essays? Got it. Oh, we do have a couple of questions here. So between school, a full-time job, and gathering experience, I'm finding it hard to find volunteer leadership work and experience. Should I put more of an emphasis on volunteer work and cut down on veterinary experience? How does the committee see that?
Okay. Okay, what I would say with that is if you feel you have a substantial amount of veterinary experience that will show that gives you good experiences to say what you understand about the profession and things like that, then yes, because these things right here in this slide, the community service, leadership, and personal development, these are often the things that will pull you above this giant mass of average people who all have basically the same experiences that you have. And so that's where I would say if you're lacking, if you feel you're lacking in veterinary experience, or you haven't gone out and you don't feel you have a diverse enough kind of look at veterinary medicine, then you probably want to do gain some more veterinary experience. But again, these are the things that you should look at as being the extras that will kind of pull you above other people, because I know often people think, oh, well, I have all this experience. And what they don't realize is that a good majority of our people have the same experience. So you're more than likely to pull yourself a little bit ahead by having, done some community service, worked with people other than yourself, taken some leadership roles, which don't necessarily mean that there has to be a president, vice president, treasurer, whatever of an organization. It can be taking charge of a bake sale for your church or something like that. So anytime you have to get a group of people to work together to get something accomplished, that's considered leadership. So you need to look at those types of things. And these are what will probably bring you a little bit ahead of others, because not everybody has these experiences, but most everybody will have pretty common veterinary experiences.
I mean, you can even do that at the clinic you're at. You can organize a food drive at your clinic. So those are things that are right there at your fingertips that you just got to think outside the box. When you're in a clinic, you can't have tunnel vision and blinders on and you only see clinical work. You got to think about people you're working with, the clients that come in there, what's going on in society. And we've had a year of things going on in society. So unless you've been living under a rock, you ought to be aware of this stuff. And there's plenty of opportunity right there in that clinic to volunteer and lead and show that.
Great, thank you. So next question says, I dropped the class last semester and got a W. Do I need to explain that withdraw, or is it okay not to?
I would say it's definitely okay not to. That is one of the things that some people think, oh no, I got a C for the first time in my life, or I withdrew from this course. I have to tell them what happened. Those are not going to impact your application, probably not at all. And again, our committee doesn't see your transcript, so we're the only ones that'll see your withdrawal, and we don't look at withdrawals, so that doesn't matter. That again, that's one of the smaller things that you really don't need to worry about. This is for something major. Say you had some type of mental illness, something happened and you had a trauma and you had something, so that you have a semester or two where your grades faltered. That's where you need to tell them, this is what happened, this is how I overcame it. But little things like getting a C in something or having a withdrawal, that for us, we don't look at that, and that doesn't concern the reviewers. For the explanation, and it should be something major that truly impacted you, and then how you recovered from that or are recovering from it.
Many people do not fill out that explanation statement. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Yeah. It's, so I would say, yeah, like they've talked about, it is really for that kind of, those big impact sort of things. Okay. So question, here about, a little bit more about veterinary experience. Would an online case studies sort of thing, with a veterinarian be considered as veterinary experience?
I'm going to turn that over to Dr. Howard. I believe we have talked about that, but I'm not sure of, I haven't heard a whole lot of discussion about the online experience. I know we take online courses, and I don't know if you remember anything, Dr. Howard, about what they're looking at for online experiences.
Well, I must have missed that admissions meeting. I don't remember that.
Actually, I think it was a discussion in our office with Dr. Gordon.
Okay. I guess, I mean, I guess I would want to know more information about that. I mean, I don't know if that's considered if that was considered a course. Like some folks can take a independent study course or do some type of capstone project where this might be part of their curriculum, or was it just not just, but was it an opportunity to work through cases with a veterinarian that they were seeing that's the only way you could interact with that veterinarian due to the pandemic? I guess I would need more information, more of a description of what that looked like in order to even privately try to give you an answer.
I think, well, I was hoping you'd remember more than I did, because it has not been brought up by the entire committee. I'm not even sure if we've seen that yet. But if it is a company offering experiences, and this is what I seem to remember, so don't quote me, but if it's a company offering experience for pay, that probably wouldn't be looked upon as a true experience. However, like Dr. Howard said, if it was an experience where you could talk with the veterinarian you're working with, say COVID caused people not to be able to work or gain these experiences, but the veterinarian said, hey, yes, we'll show you, some of this, because I know some veterinarians do have cameras and things like that, and with permission of their clients, they might be able to discuss that with you. So that would be different than a canned, here's your experience, you give us, $500 and we'll give you so many hours of experience. again, I do not believe our committee has seen that. I know it wasn't discussed by the committee, but rather by the chair of the committee and people in our office.
Great, thank you. I know that I think I did see some advertisement for those canned programs where they were doing a virtual thing this year. So I wonder if more folks will have stuff like that.
So I guess I can't truly answer that because I don't have the full kind of committee's view on it. But right now, I don't think that would be put at much value.
Yeah. Okay, question here. If I'm an unsuccessful applicant, am I told why? So essentially, if you are an unsuccessful applicant, we'll invite you to a webinar like this, where you'll get to kind of hear from us about what we're looking for in a successful applicant, and then be able to ask your specific questions about, hey, I had this for experience. Are there things that I can do to improve and stuff like that? So specific questions you'll be able to ask. But yes, we'll help. We will do what we can to help support students who are reapplying, just like we are on this webinar. So great question. And then
I would just throw in here that if it's coursework, if you're denied admission early, we give folks a chance to find coursework if the coursework they have is not compatible with our prerequisites. So we do allow time for a student to find some coursework that will meet our prerequisites. If your GPA is not competitive from if it doesn't meet the cutoff early, we would let a student know then that is the reason why your application is being denied. If you don't have enough letters of reference, that's also something we would let you know early in the process. In experience, that would come if your application meets the academic cutoff and goes to the committee. Then those are the more in-depth parts of your application that these types of webinars are going to address.
perfect. Yes, thank you. Thank you. Okay, question. What about training kind of going back to the leadership thing, what about training new staff? Absolutely. If you get to train, if you're asked to train people, especially new staff coming in, wonderful leadership. Point that out on your application. Absolutely. Okay.
And have that supported by the person that's writing you a letter of reference. Have them validate that that's what you did, because the more reinforcement you can have about things you state in your application, the better.
Mm-hmm. I got a question here about the biomedical science program. If I've been admitted to that, will that also go into the education part? So if you're applying for this cycle, I think you can say that you're enrolled in that program, but we don't evaluate any planned, planned experiences and things like that. But yes, you should absolutely let us know which classes are, part of that you're planning on taking, either in progress or planned classes. Absolutely. Okay, will there be an opportunity for personal application reviews like in previous years? So essentially that's what this is. You're hearing a lot about what you can do to improve your application. The second portion of it, you'll get to go into a breakout room with Dr. Howard and Kathy, and they will answer any specific questions that you have. And then if you have follow-up questions, you can contact them if they're not answered today. Okay, and we'll talk, we'll tackle this too now, since we're kind of in between topics here. Will I need to send a transcript through at the end of the semester? Yes. So you'll need transcripts for everything that you've taken at the time of when you hit submit on your application, right? So you're sending in those transcripts this summer. Then by January 20th of 2022, You'll send in summer courses if you are taking them and haven't sent them in, and then fall 2021 courses. Then by July 1st, if you're admitted to the program or if you're on our alternate list, you'll send in your transcripts for spring of 2022. So yes, you'll send us transcript updates. Absolutely. Okay, I think we're gonna go on to talk a little bit about essays, and then I think we've got a break. Nope, we're gonna talk about Casper, and then we'll have a break. If you do need a break, this is being recorded, so if you do need to step away from your computer, you can find us on YouTube a little bit later next week too. But let's talk about essays. So VMCAS has the personal statement now that you can see the wording there. It's 3,000 characters, characters, not words, characters. And then make sure VMCAS has some instructions that will give you some good points for, to include on that essay. And then if you go to the VMCAS help, there are some good pointers and good things to consider when writing that essay. So a lot of good help in that, in VMCAS for that personal statement.
Deanna, I'd just like to tell people that when it says 3,000 characters, it means 3,000 characters. Every year there are people that get their essays cut off because they've got too many characters in there. And even if you cut and paste, it will cut it off at that point. So I don't know if Microsoft Word, I don't know, I think you can get a character count as well as a word count. So you need to look at that and pay attention, again, only because it just hurts your application if you can't get your final last two sentences into your application or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so after you copy and paste, read your essay again to make sure. So we also have additional questions in VMCAS. It's not on the supplemental application. It is in VMCAS. I needed to change that, and I didn't. I apologize. I'll update it and put it in the slide deck and send it out to y'all. But this is actually, so this is in VMCAS. There are additional essay questions here. So 1,300 characters on how you value and the importance of diversity and inclusion in the veterinary profession, and how do you contribute to or support the goal for diversity and inclusion in the veterinary profession, for increasing diversity and inclusion in the veterinary profession. So 1,300 characters there. If you are a Nebraska resident, there are 2 additional questions. If you are interested in our dual DVM MBA program, there's an additional question there as well. So that is in VMCAS program materials, additional questions. Question, if I am interested in the DVM MBA but not committed to doing it or not sure if I would be able to, should I select no to be on the safe side? So for the DVM MBA program, you'll actually do your first year of the MBA before you head to vet school. So you should, I think you should be sure that that is the program that you want to do, because you also need to apply to the graduate college, right?
Right.
Okay.
What will happen with that is that I look for those that want to do the DVM MBA. I send the essay over to the MBA people, and they determine whether or not that person should go to be admitted. And so it's, I mean, you can always say no. People can always decline a DVM position or the MBA position. So, I mean, think about it. If you aren't sure, but you really are seriously considering it, complete the essay. If you're just kind of half and half, we have people that do this afterwards. So, I mean, it doesn't say you can't ever get an MBA, but you need to be seriously considering it in order to complete the essay, just to not give people a lot of extra work just because you think you might want to do it. You can always do it later.
Yeah. So, and now a question, are we allowed to use the same essays from last cycle for this cycle? I think that there are a lot of points in the last year's cycle when we had the 3 questions that probably would fit nicely into your personal statement. You should not copy and paste your essays just in one block for that personal statement. So for this diversity and inclusion essay, it's the same as last year. You could reuse that essay. You may want to reflect on it and tweak it though. If you are reapplying, it would be good to, make sure that you've refined that a little bit for your second or your reapplication. The personal statement, I think you could probably use some of the same elements, but you're going to want to, make that a cohesive one essay versus just trying to use all 3 responses. But great question there. Okay, so Kathy had talked about this, double check when you're copying and pasting, but this is about 3,000 characters, about a page single spaced. So you do have, I think, more room than you had for questions last year, but you still want to use that space wisely, definitely. So things to consider. Please, 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 please proofread. Have someone else proofread it. Have another person proofread it. Have someone who is awesome at grammar proofread it. Have someone who knows you proofread it as well. So what happens, we all know, right, is autocorrect does a really great job at making sure we're spelling things, but it does not an awesome job at, saying that, hey, you really need to use veterinary here when you're talking about, a describing word, and you need to use veterinarian here when you're talking about a person, right? 2 different things, but autocorrect isn't, going to determine that. So please, 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 please proofread your essay and, make sure that you're catching those grammatical errors as well.
Autocorrect doesn't pick up homonyms either.
What?
Autocorrect does not pick up homonyms.
Mm-hmm.
So there, and there, 2,
Yeah.
2, and 2, for those who don't remember the word homonym.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Have that person who's an expert who goes on, social media and corrects all of the there, and there's. Have that person read your essay. So also be realistic with your career goals, kind of going into some more content things. If you want to be able to, volunteer your services to local animal shelters and everything, that is wonderful. The reality is you're going to come out of vet school. Most students are going to come out of vet school with some student debt. Many students are going to come out of vet school with a lot of student debt. So you're probably not going to be able to work for free full time. So what are you going to do to bolster, to be able to earn a salary, pay off those student loans, and do a little bit of, kind of work, volunteering, or donate your work on the side as well. There are a lot of wonderful things you can do with the veterinary profession, but you also have to, be realistic about that, the money aspect of it as well, and what jobs are out there too. So, I think of the one alumni that we have who is he works with Mandalay Bay and is in charge of the health of the sharks in the shark tank. That is a very rare job, right? So what are you going to do while you're kind of working towards that is good to kind of keep in mind. Back your essay up with some examples. You don't have to regurgitate your veterinary or animal or other experience, but like Kathy and Dr. Howard have both mentioned, it's about what you learn in that, not clinical skills, but what you learn about the profession. when you're doing all of that, gaining all of your experiences. So talk about what you learn in those things, and in those experiences, what you've learned. Please remember to be professional. If you wrote this essay and you were going to turn it into, a law school or a med school, and it would sound funny or, childish or like a creative writing assignment, don't turn it into vet school as well. We are a professional medical program. So you want to make sure that your essay is professional as well. Essentially what we want to do is we want to make sure that you have a mature understanding of the veterinary profession, and you have mature career goals, right? And that's essentially how you're telling us about your communication style, your maturity level, is that essay. Because we don't interview, this is really your time to kind of communicate who you are. So I know a lot of people, I've talked to a lot of pre-veterinary students who wanted to be a veterinarian since they were 6 years old. My niece is one of those people. And I'm, like, yes, I've got one student recruited, hopefully. But what's more important is why, at the stage that you are now as an adult, making an investment in your career, are you pursuing veterinary medicine? Right? So I've wanted to be a veterinarian since I was 6 isn't as impactful as saying, hey, right now, this is the decision that I'm making, and this is why. So anything else on essays that we should cover that I forgot?
I just want to throw in there that, again, and I'm speaking from experience, when I have veterinary students that come in and talk to me about what they're thinking about in their career path, or connections that they need to make, those are opportunities where that student gets to know more information than they walked in the door with. It's also an opportunity for me, if they're going to ask me to write a letter of reference, that I can say, I sat down with so-and-so, we talked at length about opportunities in this area or that area. And so to flip it back for you folks who are trying to get into veterinary school, again, you can take a lot in by observing and in a clinical practice or in a research setting, and going through the clinical skills and things like that. But there is so much value in sitting down with a veterinarian and taking the time to ask them the hard questions. What did you find most challenging about your job? What are some things that, if I'm entering this profession, I should be considering? That's how you become an informed person and know whether this is the right profession for you. It's not because you can pet a dog or cat or soothe them when they're ill. It's everything else that's involved in this profession. So the more informed you can be on the front end, the more you know if this is the correct career path for you, and the better that essay is going to be when you're talking about your personal statement. Because if you can say in that essay, I've spent a considerable amount of time talking to Dr. X about this career path, what it's done for them, connections they've made, opportunities they've had, impacts they've made, whatever the case might be. But you have got to sit down with these veterinarians and talk to them. That's what they long to be educators and to talk to you. So, a lot of people that go into this profession are introverts. You need to get over that for a little bit and start talking to folks, because that's the only way you're going to know if this is the right profession for you. This is the only way you're going to be able to write an essay that is impactful and can set you above other folks who are applying. And again, that letter of reference, it all ties in together.
Yeah, thank you for that. You're right. It's so cohesive. Every part of your application is going to support another part of your application. Wonderful. So question, a question here is, if we switched from one career path to veterinary medicine, would that be a good way to go about the personal statement?
Definitely. What you need to do is you don't have to make a story out of it, which people tend to do. And it doesn't need to be a story, but you can say, why did you start in this career, in the first career? You know, what did you think, you know, made that a good career for you? And then what changed your mind, and why, you know, why do you want to do it now? It can be simple, something as simple as, I really didn't think about veterinary medicine at first, and how you got exposed to veterinary medicine and decided to change to that, to, you know, to my parents wouldn't let me do it. It can be a variety of things, but that is definitely, you know, what happened in your adult life to make you change from one career to consider veterinary medicine. And you do need to show, to say something about how you became attracted to veterinary medicine at that time, rather than the career that you were in. But definitely you should mention that, because they will see that on your application, you know, because they will be able to see where you worked, what employment you had, what degrees you may have gotten from various schools. So you do need to explain that, and you do need to kind of explain the thought process of why you went from one to the other.
I would also say, and that's perfect. And I can remember an application I had one year where a student said that her family would only pay for her undergraduate education if she majored in finance. And that was the only way they paid for it. And once she got that degree in finance, she said, okay, I've got this. This isn't really what I wanted to do. Veterinary medicine is the profession I've always wanted to do. And now that I can pay for my own education, this is what I'm going to do. Now, on the other hand, if you are, you know, if you're coming from a career path where, you know, you just, at some point now you realize that it wasn't the correct fit, it's good to do some reflection on that. And again, like Ms. Keel said, don't provide a story, just say, you know, I reflected on the past years, found I wasn't happy, I wasn't being fulfilled, whatever the case might be. But following that, you do need to show that you have done your homework on this profession. And that's what we don't want to see, is somebody jump from profession to profession willy-nilly and not have a rhyme or reason as to why they're doing it. I would also say that if you're coming from a profession that could dovetail with the veterinary profession, and you see that, you have that vision, then that would be another way to explain that. So say you got a degree in business, okay? And now you're thinking about the veterinary profession, and you're saying, hey, I've got this background in business. I did work with a veterinarian, or I've had some experience with a veterinarian, or whatever the case might be, and I really see a good opportunity to have a veterinary practice and develop a good business model for that. You know, think about that, being creative in your approach to flipping degrees. Entrepreneurship is another one. If you got a degree in entrepreneurship, think about how you can make that dovetail with the veterinary profession, so it doesn't look like you're just sampling everything at the salad bar till you find something you like. Okay, think about it.
Ah, great, thank you. So the next question kind of bounces off of that, and I've got a couple. One is the public one from Vanessa, and then one is private to me. So they both talk about having a career goal that maybe can't be backed up by their veterinary experience. So one is the example of veterinary mission trips that's public. The other one is, you know what, I really want to pursue large animal medicine, but haven't had the opportunity. All of my experiences in small animal medicine. So how do you how do students, or maybe how might students address that in the essays?
Well, first off, to not have any experience in the area that you say you want to be in really doesn't work. Somewhere you have to get some experience with large animal medicine, shadowing, volunteering someplace, but you can't just say that you want to do something and then have no experience in it, only because you honestly, without seeing this, you don't know. How do you know that that's what you want to do? It might look really intriguing if you've watched a couple of large animal veterinarians that have basically YouTube channels and things like that. But without actually doing it, that in itself would be would not look good. They wouldn't take you seriously if somehow you hadn't gotten some type of experience within large animal production, animal medicine. Dr. Howard, can you speak to that at all?
Yes, Vanessa, that's a good question, and I might have a little bit of advice for you. The church that I attend, one of my colleagues, Dr. Plummer, who's a veterinarian, has gone on mission trips with the church, not in the role of a veterinarian, but he's still a veterinarian going on these trips. And so it's not a veterinary mission trip, it's a church trip, okay? But they're doing missionary work there. It would not be a surprise to me for him in his role as a veterinarian to have touched some animals in that experience, right? So if you've got a veterinarian you know who maybe goes on church mission trips and as a side happens to do some veterinary work, then that might be a good opportunity for you to say, hey, if you're going on this mission trip, and if you can afford to, your finances work, or you can get support to go on these trips that are just general church mission trips, that's a step in the door of a foot in the door to having that experience. And then to say, because I've had this experience, this very small experience that was part of a larger experience, I would like to at some point go on, be a part of mission trips that are exclusively veterinary focused. So think about that. It may take you a little bit of digging to do, but it's an opportunity that might be there for you, some low-hanging fruit.
Great, thank you. Okay, I think we're gonna move on to a little bit more about Casper, knowing that we'll have some time for general Q&A at the end as well. So Kathy, I know you wanted to specifically talk about Casper.
Right. We are requiring it this year. It will just be 10% of the total evaluation. It's a situational judgment test. You'll either be given a written, I think there's 12 different ones, either a written scenario or a video scenario. And they're going to give you 3 questions on that scenario that you will have to answer in 5 minutes. So that in a nutshell is what the Casper test is. It is there to basically measure what we consider soft skills, such as your ethics, empathy, resilience, problem solving, collaboration. There's a total of 10. I don't have them all down there. So that is what this test is supposed to evaluate. Because we don't interview, this is one thing that we wanted to try. Again, it is new. We're not exactly sure how it's going to work within our evaluation of applicants. I'm pretty sure in 4 or 5 years, it will be assessed to see if it has made a difference in our class and their success. if you go to this www.takealtus.com /Casper, there's tons of information there. And they have free practice tests. And again, as Deanna has here, that the last date to take a test is September 9th. Anybody who took it last year will have to retake it. They will not send out last year's scores. You have to take it every year. That is their requirement, not ours. We will be using the Z-score. That's the score they will give us, and that's basically how many standard deviations you're above and below the mean for the people that have taken the test. It's basically a bell curve. And so that's how we will be looking at it. You will not receive your score. They will not send student scores. They will send those scores to us. I'm not sure they send us a score. They're not going to send us your answers to the test. They will just send us a score. So we can't tell you at all whether you did good, bad on, scenario number 2. We don't have any of that information, and we won't have any of that information. So I strongly suggest that you go to look at this takealtus.com /Casper. Altus, actually, if you just go to Take Altus, it will send you to the Altus suite, and they have 3 different tests there. We are only talking about Casper, not about the other tests. So basically, that's all it is. Again, the site will give you more information on it. You have to have a computer, you have to have a camera. The computer has to meet certain standards, and I don't know what that is. The camera is strictly for security and to keep people from cheating. So you will not be answering anything in person talking to somebody. You will be answering everything as a written answer to the 3 questions they give you on each scenario.
Great, thank you, Kathy. We did have a few clarifying questions. So yeah, a couple of questions about going to a testing center. It is done at home on your own computer, or you may have to go somewhere if you don't, like your library or something like that, if you don't have a webcam, because that is a requirement. So definitely go to takealtus.com /Casper. I put it in the chat as well. But yes, you do it at home. You don't have to worry about going to a testing center or anything like that. And then a question here: we are only allowed 1 attempt and will not know how we rank against others. Yes. So essentially, you're going to take this situational judgment test. You're going to answer the questions to the best of your ability and genuinely. And we use that just like if you were interviewing and you were, answering our questions genuinely and to the best of your ability in person. You're just doing it online instead. So we're still evaluating based on that. We wouldn't score interviews. Essentially, we don't, or score or rank, interviews and give you that, where you won't get that Casper score, if that kind of makes sense, or that rank.
Right, and Casper will not give it to you. And how you rank, I have not even yet seen exactly how these scores look, because we haven't gotten them yet. So yeah, it's new to everyone. But again, there's a lot more information on it on their website.
Mm-hmm. Great. Okay, we have a couple of helpful tip slides, and then I promise we'll let you take a break and grab some lunch or some coffee or whatever you need. So just a few kind of helpful tips here. Read all of your instructions thoroughly on VMCAS, on our supplemental application, on our website, all of that. If we haven't said it enough, I'll say it again. Please proofread not just your essays, but your whole application. Go through it one more time to make sure that you have your, your ducks in a row before you hit submit. Have another person proofread. You can actually print off your application in PDF format and send it to someone. I probably would not give my username and password to someone. There's been some funky stuff with that in years past. So I would just print off a PDF of that. Be concise and realistic, use that space on your, in your descriptions, on your essays and all of that wisely. Communicate. So whether that's with VMCAS on things that they ask you about or things that you have questions about, with us. So if you have technical questions, those are going to be best to put on your message board through the supplemental application. If you want general information, you want a tour when they come back, hopefully, if you want to be connected with a student, you can email me about those. You can also put them on your message board and we'll get them there as well. Communicate with your evaluators. Like Dr. Howard said, this is your investment. It is not my live stream or, Kathy's live stream or Dr. Howard's live stream that you go to veterinary school. It's not your evaluator's life goal that you go to veterinary school. It's yours. So communicate with them, follow up with them, thank them when you see, a VMCAS notification that they have completed their evaluation. Say, oh my gosh, that's wonderful. Thank you so much for doing that. I like that, Dr. Howard. And so, and communicate with the institutions that you're looking for transcripts from. Be on top of that. Make sure that you've got your transcripts in. If they are delayed or something like that, communicate with those institutions too. Again, double check that your application is complete, double check that you've got all of those elements, getting to VMCAS or getting to us, just double check. It is an investment. It's a huge investment in time and money. And I think the most, disappointing thing is that if you don't even get to be evaluated because, you're missing one of those elements.
I want to say something while you're right there. Last year, it was about 400 applicants out of our 2,000 that were denied because something was incorrect. It had nothing to do with their abilities, their experience, their essays. It had everything to do with the fact that they didn't read instructions. They missed an evaluation. They didn't have their transcripts in. They didn't have our coursework done. They paid at, was it 150? I don't know what VMCAS's price are, but per school, so you probably, or they probably spent over $200 to apply to our school just for us to say, sorry, we can't review your application. And that's 400 people. So as Deanna, read instructions, because I hate telling people, sorry, we're not going to look at your application because you don't have this, this, or this. And so, yeah, it is your dream. It is your baby. And you need to be responsible. We are not responsible for reminding you that we don't have something. You need to double check everything, and don't get mad at us then when you haven't done what you were supposed to do. So we take questions. I love questions. I'll answer any question prior to the deadline, things like that. But I'm not going to write to everybody who doesn't have all 3 evaluations 2 weeks before the deadline ends. So that's where you need to take over.
And I'll just add in here too, that once you've submitted your application, your job is not done. You still need to check your message board. Yes. And you sign a terms of use that says you'll check it regularly. And I'm sure that 400 is on the front end of people not having their application submitted. there's a good chunk of people who are denied because they don't look at their message board and meet a
Yes.
deadline we've asked them to meet. And we can see when you log in. So we can see when you've read a message. So we've had some folks try to tell us, oh no, I just saw this message, and we can see, no, you were in here just last week. And so you got to follow this all the way through. So if you got a deadline, meet the deadline. If you get to a point, if we've given you a deadline and you're still working on it, please let us know. Don't wait till we say, sorry, you haven't responded by the deadline. We're denying your application, and then say, but I was working on this all last week. Well, we didn't know that.
Mhm.
So if something's come up, you've hit a snag, you can't get in touch with an instructor, say, hey, that instructor is out of town this week. I've been trying to contact them via email and they haven't responded. We are happy to extend your deadline to a reasonable amount, but you have to let us know before you get the message that says, we're done looking at your application because you have not met the deadline. So please, please don't throw this money out the window.
Yeah. Thank you. That's wonderful. I think that honestly, that is the biggest thing, right? Is that we have so many students who are don't get to that academic review and that committee review because of those things, and they're all things that they can help. They can absolutely help. So definitely, be on top of it. Be on top of your application. It's better for you to ask us questions or ask VMCAS questions and get an answer. Even if you think it's like a silly question, then not ask it and that be, one of the things that prevents you from going to vet school this year. So,
And just one more thing, remember that some of the things we're telling you are those soft skills you need in the profession. Proofread means attention to detail, right? If you're doing a surgery in veterinary medicine and you don't tie off a small bleeder, that's attention to detail. And now you got a hemo abdomen, So it's those types of things, meeting deadlines, communication. So it's not, we don't do this because we just want to make you jump through hoops. These are all skills you are going to be using if you become a veterinarian. So, just saying.
mm-hmm. Yep. I think that's a really wonderful point. Yeah, it really is. One of the people who worked for AAVMC said, hey, your first test of whether you're, you can be a veterinarian or not, the first literal test is this application. So do you have what it takes to make it through the application process? Absolutely. So you can see there kind of when we talk about like what you can do to, improve your application or what you can do to stand out. These things are what can help you stand out. So this is what we're looking for. We talked about all of these kind of throughout the last couple of hours, definitely. So kind of on this, I think we need to go into a break, let people use the restroom, get a snack or more coffee, whatever time of day it is and whatever you need, where you're at. And then when we come back, what we'll do is we'll split into those students who are new applicants this year, and those students who are reapplying. So we'll kind of split you up then, but let's come back at 12:10. So we've got about 6 minutes to reset. You're welcome to, send questions in during this break. But we're going to take, now 5 minutes because I talked too long or because I talked too much. We're going to take 5 minutes. At 12:10, we'll restart and regroup. So thanks, everybody. Okay, welcome back, everyone. So right now what we're going to do is we are going to break you all into groups as far as those students who are reapplying and our new applicants. And so I'm going to open up the breakout rooms If depending on what you indicated on your registration form, I have some of you already assigned to breakout room 1 if you're an applicant. If you do not get a breakout room request and you are a re-applicant, let me know and I'll put you into that breakout room 1. If you randomly got assigned to the breakout room and you're not supposed to be there, you can just join the main room or leave the breakout room and join us if you're a new applicant. And then Dr. Howard and Kathy, I think you're going to be able to join the breakout room once I open it up here. So
Okay.
we'll see how it goes and we'll work it out as it goes.
Okay.
Great. So you should see a breakout room request that you can join.
I'm assuming 1 is A.
Yes, 1 is A. I apologize about that. I didn't rename it. So you both can join breakout room 1.
Yeah.
Perfect. And for those of you still in our session, welcome. If you are a re-applicant and need to be put in breakout room 1, let me know. Okay, perfect. Okay, Courtney, I think you should be sorted out now. There we go. Perfect. Great. Okay, so we will go ahead and get started. If you are supposed to be in breakout room 1 and you're not there, you can join if you'd like, or you can stay here. What we're going to do is we're going to go through kind of basic ins and outs of VMCAS and the supplemental application. I'll be happy to take as many questions as I can as well. Because it looks like there are about 7 of us, 7 or 8 of us on here, kind of new applicants. If you would like to unmute and ask a question, you're welcome to. We're essentially, the goal is to learn from each other and all of that. So please feel free to continue using the chat or unmute and do questions that way. So great. Okay, so let's kind of go through VMCAS. This would be a good time if you do have your VMCAS started. You can go ahead and open that up and walk through these things with me. Ask questions if you want, and all of that. So we will go ahead and get started. Obviously, this is the VMCAS kind of portal, the first thing that you saw. This was from last year, so updates may look a little bit different, but the elements are still the same. One thing is this check status page. Definitely keep that up. Sorry. Or keep that kind of in the front of your mind. That's where you're going to see your transcripts come through. That's where you're going to see completed letters of recommendation. All of that kind of stuff is in there. So good to kind of think about in there for the for that. And then the notifications that you'll see different notifications based on what VMCAS is communicating with you. So it'll say like so and so submitted their letter of recommendation, or new alerts and notifications will go there, pretty much like a lot of websites that we all use too. So so that's kind of briefly VMCAS, but definitely keep your eye on those, because that's sometimes how VMCAS communicates versus emails. So that's really, really great to kind of keep in mind there. So we do have questions about about categorizing experiences every year. So this is coming straight from AAVMC, so the people who run VMCAS. So it's a good kind of thing to keep in mind. Again, I'll provide the slide deck, but if you want a screenshot or whatever, you absolutely can. So essentially, good question, good first question to ask: was it research? If yes, then categorize it as research experience. Was it related to animals? No, if you say no, then it's just general employment experience. And then was it supervised by a veterinarian? If yes, then that's veterinary experience. If no, then it's general animal experience. The one thing I would say about this is, like, I've talked to students who are, pretty much kennel technicians, so they're doing the cleaning of the kennels and all of that kind of stuff. Even though the person who maybe signs your paycheck is the veterinarian, that is more animal related than direct veterinary experience. So that would be kind of the one caveat there. So any questions about categorizing experiences that you've got? And again, you can unmute or type something in if you want. Okay, great. So as far as combining experiences, have one entry per, location, clinic, or business. So if you started out as a kennel technician and then, you were able to maybe become a veterinary assistant at that same kennel, put that as one experience and let us know in the description. I would put it as one experience, categorize it as veterinary experience, and then put in the description, hey, I started out for the first 3 months as a kennel tech and then moved to a veterinary assistant position. So you can put that in there. Describing your experiences, we have no preference whether you do paragraph or bullet points. Paragraphs, I think, gives you, if you use paragraphs, I think that it gives you a few more characters than using up characters for your bullet list, but either way is perfect. The one thing I would say is to be consistent with that. So if you do bullets for everything, do bullets for everything. If you do paragraphs for everything, or if you do paragraphs for some stuff, do it for everything. It just makes it easier for the admissions committee to kind of read and keep track of. So any questions on experiences in general that you've got? Again, you can type it in or unmute, whatever works best for you. Great. If you do want us to go back and talk about experiences, if you're furiously typing out your question, that's totally fine. We can absolutely talk about those too. So let's talk about transcripts. So you do need to send in your transcripts for your classes, or for any of your classes now that you're doing, or any coursework you've done up until now. All of those transcripts go to VMCAS. So we need transcripts from those community college courses taken, or I should say college courses taken in high school, that one community college class you took, maybe to get an elective or something like that, including non-prerequisite courses. So, if you took a stats or a stats class at a community college, even though it's not a prerequisite, we still need that transcript from that one class. So all transcripts. Some students talk about, or some students will be like, well, that means that I have to order 5, or transcripts from 5 different institutions. That's okay. It's not rare at all. I mean, we've had students who have 11 different transcripts coming in. So absolutely any and all collegiate courses that you took, even if they show up on another transcript as a transfer credit, you still need that original transcript. Aileen, I see your question here. I'm going to get to that in just a second. And then Maggie's question about transcripts from high school, or is it okay if that information from high school classes is on a college transcript? So if it is a community, or if it's a course for college credit that you took in high school, so, you know, say from the local community college or the local college and university, we need the transcript from that college. We do not need high school courses, you know, course transcript. So, you know, if you took, you know, calculus and it shows up on your, you know, high school calculus, and it shows up as a way to test out of, you know, taking some college level math classes, we don't need that high school class. But if it's courses for college credit, dual enrollment courses, those sorts of things, you need it from the college where you took it in high school. AP courses or courses, AP courses, if they show up on your transcript saying, you know, okay, they took AP physics and that transfers in as physics 111, that's perfectly fine. If it says they took X number of, you know, AP courses and it kind of transfers in as just general credit, but you took AP physics, you know, you got a 4 or 5 on that test, we will actually take that as a or we will count that as your prerequisite. But you need to give us that AP test then, if it shows up as just kind of general credits coming into undergrad. Hopefully that makes sense. On VMCAS, there's a place to put planned and in progress courses. Please, please, please put that in to VMCAS. You can submit your application technically without it, but what we do then when you put in your planned, so planned would be, you know, summer and fall of 2021. Planned would be spring of 2022 and maybe fall of 2021, depending on when you put that, send in your application. You know, generally those in progress courses are either summer of 2021 or fall of 2021 classes. What we'll do then is we're going to be able to go through those classes and say, okay, they are planning on taking genetics and biochemistry. If you leave all of that blank, then we're going to reach out to you and say, hey, when are you taking, you know, we see that you haven't taken anatomy and physiology yet. When are you going to take it? Where are you going to take it? And you're going to have to give them the course number. So it's less work for both people if you just put in your planned and in progress courses. But definitely we'll need to know that. The other thing to think about is if you change, you know, people change classes, you know, what classes that they're taking in a given semester. If you do make a change, put that on your message board on your supplemental application. We'll talk about that in a little bit though, that supplemental application. If you plan on doing the professional transcript entry, and you have questions about that, please send them to VMCAS. We do not do anything with the professional transcript entry at all. So I know that some students really appreciate that. Some students don't use it. So we are neutral on it. We have no preference on whether you do it or not, but we also then don't have very much information about it. So please send your questions to VMCAS. You will update us with your fall 2021 and spring 2022 transcripts. Those need to be sent to Iowa State. So I apologize, that should say fall 2021 and spring 2022. If you took classes in the fall of 2020 and spring of 2021, those are going to VMCAS in this first round of transcripts. So I apologize about that typo. But you can send them straight to this email address. You can also find this information on our apply page. So if you go to Iowa State, vetmed.iastate.edu, you click on, hover over students, click on future students, then there's an apply button, click that apply button, and it gives you a bunch of different helpful links there. So If you have any other questions on transcripts, this is a great place to put those in the chat box or unmute. While you're thinking about those questions, I do want to go back to this question about field research. Is field research veterinary or research experience if you saw bleeding pigs and working strictly with veterinarians? You could put it as either. Honestly, we're going to look at it. You know, I would put it as veterinary experience probably, but you could put it as either. Neither one's wrong. If you're doing research with veterinarians, it is both research and veterinary medicine. If you feel like you have thousands and thousands and thousands of hours of veterinary experience and you want that to kind of be in the research bucket, you could do that. Our admissions committee is going to evaluate it the same though. So either way, you can't go wrong with that. Good question. Any other questions that you've got? Great. Okay. And again, if you're typing, keep typing and we'll come back to it. So let's talk about the supplemental application briefly. So you are going to be asked to put in your top activities and awards from both high school and undergrad. That is on the supplemental application. Activities does not mean experience. So we're not looking at for veterinary experience or work experience. We're looking at things like extracurricular activities, volunteerism, service, all of that kind of stuff. So your kind of other stuff, like sports and all of that kind of stuff. Awards are like you see there, scholarships, recognition, research, if you've published research. So we're looking for kind of that outside of that, like official experience, if that makes sense. Those, when we say that they're in high school, we're talking about during your high school years. We're not talking about affiliated with your high school. So it could be outside community activities as well. Same thing in undergrad. We really think about undergrad and beyond for that. And it's just the time frame of that, not necessarily only things that are associated with your college or university. If you get in the supplemental application, you accidentally hit submit, you want to edit things before the deadline, put a message on your message board. Again, we'll talk about the message board in a little bit. And you can absolutely do that. So not a big deal to unsubmit your application. Again, communicate with us, let us know, and we'll be happy to help you out with that. So that's kind of, and like I said, we'll talk about the ins and outs of that supplemental application in just a little bit. So COVID, again, I'm sorry, my dates are right in this. So COVID impacts, let us, you are absolutely okay taking pass-fail courses. Let us know on any impacts that COVID has had on you and your preparation for vet school. So we want to know about that. We want to, if you want to share it with us, we will absolutely evaluate that and kind of help that fill in your story of how you're getting to vet school. And then if you go to that vet school, applytovetschool.org that I posted earlier, they have a list of like kind of COVID impacts for each school. Some schools had, gotten rid of interviews. Some schools will be reinstating interviews or doing an online interview or something like that. I know a lot of schools are evaluating what that looks like going forward now. Some schools drop the GRE. Some schools will keep the GRE, gone for the future as well. Some schools are reinstating it. So it's good to double check that. applytovetschool.org. So a little bit more about our kind of our program site on the VMCAS. So you can see here under program materials, this is kind of the landing page that you'll see. Those additional questions, so that diversity question, the 2 Nebraska questions, and the MBA question are all going to be found in here. This is not the supplemental application. This is just kind of additional questions and information there. So good to kind of point out there. So you can see there, that's where the questions are. So we will link to the Iowa State supplemental application. Definitely read through this so that you know kind of the instructions that you're that you need for that. But this is kind of how you answer those additional questions. So that is an outdated essay thing. Sorry about that. Professional transcript was new a couple of years ago. So either, like I said, either way is fine. You can fill it out. You can have VMCAS fill it out, or list your prerequisites, your transcripts, however you would like to do it is totally fine with us. So the transcript entry, you can see there, you'll go by, go by terms there. This is my first term way back in, or some of them way back in, way back in college. But you can see there kind of how that comes out then. So definitely there's video walkthroughs, there's information. VMCAS really does try and give you a lot of help. So the best thing to do is if you have a question specifically on your VMCAS essay that's more about procedure, look in their help sections, and then contact them if you have any questions on that. So I know VMCAS very briefly. I open up an application each year so that if you call me on the phone and ask a question, I can kind of try and help you troubleshoot. But VMCAS and their team is going to be way more helpful than I can be, but I can sure try. We can try and kind of tackle problems together. But yeah, resources on VMCAS are definitely there for you. So then when you get ready in this prerequisites tab, you're going to match essentially the classes that you put in with the prerequisites. And so you're going to tell us, hey, I'm using, Chem 271 for organic chemistry, or I'm using Physics 111 for the physics prerequisite. So you're going to match those in there. And then that's how you do that. So you're going to select your organic chemistry course. You're just going to hit the little, plus sign for the one that, makes the most sense or that you're using for organic chemistry. So this is, here you'll see a description of this. So remember that for like organic chemistry and for physics, we're looking for the first semester in a 2-semester series. So we're specifically looking for organic chemistry 1 with the lab and physics 1 with the lab. We always get questions about, well, I did better in organic chemistry 2. Can I use that? And unfortunately, no, we're looking for the content in organic chemistry 1, not just the grade. Okay, and then here's where you would see like all of the schools that you're applying to there. These, so this is that check status page. These got out of order somehow, and I apologize about that. I did proofread this. I talk about proofreading, and then we're having some issues here, but that's okay. So check status, you can see there, who your evaluations are coming from, which transcripts are in, or if they've not arrived yet to, so you'll have that good information as well. So kind of going forward, then we're going to talk a little bit about the evaluation request. So we talked a lot about letters of recommendation. Maybe you have already sent some of, had those conversations and sent some of these out already. But essentially, as soon as you fill out this page and hit save, an email is going to go instantly to that recommender. So it's good to have a conversation, about asking for that letter of recommendation before you put their name in VMCAS. So, you'll fill out the information here. You can actually even write a little note in there saying, like, thanks so much. I enjoyed our conversation, whatever. I'm excited for you to write me a letter of recommendation. You may even want to put in some of those qualities that they, that you're hoping that they'll address, and all of that in there too. So we got a question, and don't know if you are in here. You are. Okay. So question I got was about waiving the right of access to the recommendations. So technically you can choose either. You can choose to waive your right or to be able to see your letters of recommendation. The committee feels that if you waive your right to seeing the letter can be more genuine, right? And hopefully you're finding recommenders that are going to talk to you about, give you glowing recommendations and all of that. But I think they kind of see that as the letter being more genuine if you waive your right to see that letter. The flip side of it is to kind of think about, if you don't feel comfortable waiving your right to see the letter of recommendation, is that the person that you want to have write your letter of recommendation? Most letters of recommendation, if I'm applying for a job or, applying for a graduate school or something like that, I'm going to, not see those letters of recommendation. I'm not going to be part of that conversation. If somebody calls my references, this is the same sort of thing. So I don't see that there's a situation where you need to see that letter, or, yeah. So if you feel the need to see that letter, I would reevaluate that recommender, is I guess where I would go with that. But if you have clarifying questions, though, please let me know about that. I would say, the preferred thing and the thing that most pre-veterinary students do is they're going to waive that, or they're going to say yes to waiving that right. Yes, good question about the deadline. So is there a recommendation for having the due date be for the letter of recommendation? That can be part of your conversation with your recommender. So you might sit down and talk to your recommender, say, hey, thanks so much. I've learned so much about this, about the veterinary profession, working in your clinic and shadowing. I'm hoping, or would you feel comfortable writing me an outstanding letter of recommendation? Great. I'm hoping that you might talk about, my organizational skills, my communication skills, blah, blah, right? And then you can even be upfront with them and say, I'm really hoping to get my application in by, September 1st. Is there a good time for a due date for you? So you can have that conversation. You might even say, hey, is it okay if I give you 2 to 3 weeks to do this? We can make the due date, August 1st or whatever. There's no recommended due date. They can blow past that due date and still get it in by September 15th. That is the drop dead due date. That other due date is whatever you want to make it. You might make it just a month out so that they don't forget about you, and 6 to 8 weeks have to think about, what your conversation was or anything like that. I just went through a grad school application process, and, I was upfront and said, hey, the application isn't due until July 15th, but I'm really hoping to get things in by the 1st of June, and that was kind of the tactic I used, so that they knew that they had a little extra time, but you know, we kind of agreed on a deadline that was earlier than that. Most of the recommenders were really excited about that because then that meant that it wasn't looming over their head all summer. So I would do the same sort of thing. You know, you could ask them what their preference is. Some veterinarians are, and some even pre-vet advisors and stuff like that are going to know that it's September 15th. So you can give them a due date, but you know, they might know too. So the other thing that's nice is if you set that early and somebody's like, oh my gosh, I'm not going to be able to get this done, you can say, that's okay. You know, we can push that due date back too. So yeah. Good question. Okay. So this is the email that they are going to receive as soon as you hit save. Like it might take them a minute or two, but this is the email that they're going to get. They're going to click on this portal or to set up their portal here. But you can see here, you've got, you know, your personal message in there, your due date that you've set, and then they'll go to that portal there. But this can be helpful too, because then you can say, hey, you're going to get an email from VMCAS, which is the, you know, the application service that we're using. You know, you can kind of give them a heads up of that. So this is that portal. The nice thing is that if you are asking for a letter of recommendation from someone who might write multiple pre-veterinary letters of recommendation, you can, they can actually do them all here at once, and they can, you know, kind of use this to say like, oh, okay, you know, I've completed one of them, or, you know, 4 of them or whatever. So they'll set up a portal like this, and then they'll click start for your letter of recommendation. So they'll go through, they'll fill out their information. Right below this then is they'll essentially rank you on a series of things on a scale from 1 to 5. There's also that not observed category. So like we talked about, the 2 questions that are animal related are ability to work with large animals and ability to work with small animals. Otherwise, it's like, you know, handles criticism well, can communicate well, you know, those sorts of things, like Dr. Howard was saying, those soft skills. So they'll evaluate you on that, and then they'll be able to either type in kind of an essay box your letter of recommendation, or they can upload a letter of recommendation. That is actually, according to this website, optional. I would say it's not optional though for any veterinary school. So I would say, you know what, and then that's where you'll type in your letter of recommendation or upload one, you know, just so that they know that that is that expectation. They can actually hit submit on it without uploading that. But most letters of recommendation, or most recommenders, upload a letter of recommendation. Any questions about that you've got? Okay. So we'll move on to the supplemental application. But again, we've got plenty of time for questions too. So here's our supplemental application. Again, you go to future students and apply, get this supplemental application. The red box is yours this year. When you do open that up, you're going to fill out your information. You do need your VMCAS ID number in order to start your supplemental application. So you do need to at least start VMCAS before doing the supplemental, but you can submit either one first or second. They both have that due date of September 15th. Let's see here. Okay, so at the bottom, you're going to see the terms of use. This is what Dr. Howard was talking about when she was talking about, you know, you're reading through these things and you're signing these things that say, I'll, you know, check my message board once on, weekly or something like that. So I know we're a lot of times used to like scrolling through and mindlessly checking a box that says, yes, I've read the terms of use. These are actually, you know, things that you're agreeing to abide by during our application process. So it's good to read through those. You can screenshot this, but again, if you've started that supplemental application, or when you start that supplemental application, you'll have these things. Okay. And then this is your applicant status page. So this is really going to be that landing page after you've submitted your, or even before you've submitted your application, your supplemental application. You're going to have this kind of status page. It is a great way to keep track of a lot of different things, so we can kind of go through it. Here you'll see your application status for most of the application process. It's probably going to say, either in academic review or in committee review. Academic review is obviously when we're going through your grades. In committee review, you'll actually stay in that as soon as your application goes to the committee. That status will change to in committee review, and it'll stay that way until February 15th when all of our decisions come out. Okay, so probably you'll hang out in that one application status for a while. And then here you would see whether you've been admitted, waitlisted, all of that kind of stuff. Then you can also see here the messaging system. That's that message board that we've talked about. It is a great place. It's the place where you'll receive messages about, hey, we need to know, where and when you're taking biochemistry. If you didn't put that in your planned and in progress courses. It's also a place where you'll find out your, information about if you've been admitted, what are your next steps. It's also a great place for you to ask questions about that application as well. So any and all questions can go on that messaging system. What's nice about that is that all of the admissions personnel have access to that. So say, if Dr. Howard is out of the office, Kathy can answer your question, or vice versa. Or they can, let me know that you're interested in, learning more about the school or whatever. So great place to have that, to have all of your communication there versus having to keep track of multiple emails, going back and forth. So it keeps it all in one spot. And then you can go back and reference too and say, hey, Dr. Howard said that this was going to work for, this course was going to work for my genetics course or whatever. Materials needed and received. So if you do, if you are missing a physics class or something like that, or English comp, we're going to say, hey, this is due, on the spring of 2021. So it's due July 1st when those spring 2021 classes have to be in, or transcripts have to be in. So you can see there kind of a tracking of what we need from you, or when it's been received. Supplemental application, obviously, you'll see that that's submitted. GPAs. So this is where it will show up your calculated, what we have calculated for your required science GPA and your last 45 credits. If you calculated it and you're like, ooh, I'm not sure how we got different numbers, or, can you explain this? Great question to put on that message board. But yes, you're welcome to double check, kind of the math on that and get some clarification if you need to on those GPAs. In order for your supplemental application to be complete, you do need the electronic signature page here, which is essentially saying that all of your information is correct and that you agree to, be an applicant for Iowa State. You're going to sign that. And then you're also going to do the fee. Obviously, if you're an Iowa State alum or a degree-seeking Iowa State student, you won't have to pay that. Or if if this is your second time or a second time applying, you won't have to pay that either. The terms of use that you agreed to, you clicked I agree, I agree, I agree. Those are still here. So if you want to go back and review them, you can. And then you can review kind of we always do like a running calendar of dates and deadlines. So you can get that there as well. So this is kind of your, the most important information kind of all in one spot as far as our supplemental application goes. You'll also see there when VMCAS was received. Now, what I will say about all of these things is that they are entered in manually. So we manually say, okay, this person has the VMCAS in, or yes, we got the supplemental application from this person. So just as a way to kind of, so anyway, it's entered in manually. So if you hit submit on VMCAS, and it doesn't automatically turn green in the supplemental application, 10 seconds later, it will change. It's just that we are doing our best to kind of make sure that we have eyes on those applications. So with that, that's all of the material that we wanted to cover today. So I want to thank you, one, for sticking with us. I know it was a long webinar, but hopefully you got some really great information. You've got our contact information up here, so feel free to screenshot or whatever that. But I want to open it up to any and all questions that I have or that you have. Oh, perfect. Thank you for asking that question again. I just got a question, and I know you had asked it way at the beginning, but I'm glad you asked it again because I lost track of it. I'm considering taking a gap year so that I can earn Iowa residency and in-state tuition. Is it frowned upon by the committee to take a gap year? Also, if I started my application but will not need it until next May, will the information I filled out stay in the application for the whole year? Okay, so let's talk about gap year first. Gap years are not bad. They're not looked at bad by the admissions committee. I think it's all about what you do in that gap year. So moving to Iowa, gaining in-state tuition, I think is wonderful. You cut tuition almost in half, from about $70,000 in cost of attendance down to about $40,000 in cost of attendance. So it's a significant amount. And I know that, so students do it for that. But you also are dealing with a smaller applicant pool as an in-state student. So you're, again, just statistics, not action. Like we've talked about all of the things you can do, right, to boost your application, but just based on statistics, out-of-state students have a 25 to 30% chance of being admitted to Iowa State. In-state students have, last year it was like a 45 to 50% chance of being admitted to Iowa State. So it does increase your admission chances as well too. I would say it's not so much that you take a year off, but it's what you do with that. So tell us your story of that year, in entering experiences and all of that. I would say as long as you don't just sit around, eating chocolate and watching Netflix, gap years, can be wonderful. They can, so it's all about what you do with it. It does give you an opportunity to kind of, balance job and, your student loans will kick in if you have some. So there's, an element of, I think, maturity that can be gained in that gap year as well. So I don't know that it's, I wouldn't recommend it for every single pre-veterinary student, but if you are in a situation where you have a gap year, I think it can be an asset for you. I don't think it's a detriment at all. Unless you don't do anything, unless you just like take a year off and chill. But you can't do that and gain in-state residency. Generally, you have to work. Okay, so then the idea of starting your application this year, but then waiting an application cycle to hit submit. So submitting next year. VMCAS will roll over all of your information. The things that you will need to order or request new are your transcripts and your letters of recommendation. So those are two things that if I was reapplying next, if I knew I was starting the application this year, but not planning to submit until next application cycle, I would maybe have those conversations about letters of recommendation, but I would not make my recommenders fill it out this year. I would wait until next year for that. And then I wouldn't worry about your transcripts either. So absolutely, you can, essentially what you'll do, you can work on it this summer, putting in experiences, as you know, maybe even taking a crack at those essays and stuff like that. And then next, you'll let the application deadline pass. VMCAS will close down. You'll be out of VMCAS from September 15th to mid-January. So you can, you know, focus on other things then. And then head to, you know, and then when January opens up again, you'll open up your app, or when January rolls around, you'll open up your application again, and then keep working on that application. So no problem to wait, you know, to kind of work on it this year and then apply next year. Great questions. Any other questions that you have that we haven't talked about that you're hoping to answer or hear today? If not, I want to thank you so much for hanging out here, and hopefully you have some really good information to continue working on that application. If you do think of other questions, or if you know, kind of heard this information and you're like, gosh, I feel like I need to talk through, you know, this with somebody in depth, please feel free to give me a shout. I'm happy to do that. Actually, yesterday, I had a meeting with a student and we just kind of talked about the concerns, you know, and things that she was worried about with her application, mostly putting in all of the experience, you know, and how time consuming that can be, and a couple of things about, you know, questions she had about her essay as well. So if you do want kind of specific things that you know, don't want to maybe bring up here with the large group, feel free to give me a shout and we can work on that over the summer, definitely.